My best friend told me not to try out for the varsity team because I'd embarrass myself. When Coach Reeves called my name at the varsity basketball roster announcement and my best friend stood up claiming I'd stolen his spot through cheating, I realized the last 4 years of our friendship had been a carefully constructed lie. The entire gym went silent. Parents stopped mid-conversation. Freshman players lowered their phones. And Liam Fitzgerald, my best friend since 8th grade, stood 3 rows behind me with his phone held high, recording everything. His face twisted into an expression I'd never seen before. Pure hatred mixed with something worse. Satisfaction. Like he'd been waiting years for this exact moment to destroy me. I'd known Liam since we were 13 years old, and both showed up to the same summer basketball camp wearing identical LeBron jerseys. We'd laughed about it, became friends instantly, and spent the next 4 years inseparable. We practiced together every afternoon, studied together most evenings, and spent weekends at each other's houses playing video games and talking about making varsity our senior year. That dream felt close enough to touch when Coach Reeves posted the tryout schedule in September. Varsity basketball at Northridge High was legendary. Our team had won 3 state championships in the last decade. Making varsity meant college scouts, potential scholarships, and respect that lasted long after graduation. Liam had been talking about varsity since freshman year, with the kind of confidence that made it seem inevitable. His dad had been team captain in the 90s, and their living room had trophies covering 2 entire shelves. Liam told me constantly that basketball was in his blood, that he was destined for varsity, and that maybe if I worked hard enough I could make junior varsity and eventually work my way up. He said this like he was being encouraging, like he was the generous friend believing in my potential when nobody else did. I accepted this dynamic without question, because Liam had always been the better player. He was taller, faster, and his jump shot looked effortless, while mine required concentration and perfect form. During practice games, he'd score 20 points while I'd struggle to make 10. When we practiced together, he'd give me tips on my footwork and defensive positioning, always framing it as friendly advice but somehow making me feel like I needed constant improvement to ever reach his level. The week before tryouts, Liam invited me to his house for what he called a serious conversation. We sat in his basement with the basketball hoop his dad had installed, and Liam pulled out his phone showing me last year's varsity tryout footage his older brother had recorded. He pointed out how intense the competition was, how brutal Coach Reeves could be with cuts, and how devastating it was when guys didn't make the team. His brother had filmed 3 kids crying in the parking lot after getting cut, and Liam made me watch the whole thing. Then he looked at me with this concerned expression and said, "Maybe I should sit this year out." He said watching me fail would kill him because we were like brothers, and he didn't want our friendship damaged by the embarrassment of me getting cut while he made varsity. He suggested I focus on junior varsity, where I'd definitely make the team and could build confidence for next year's varsity tryouts. The way he said it made it sound reasonable and protective, like he was saving me from humiliation. He told me everyone knew the senior spots were basically locked because Coach Reeves favored upperclassmen with experience, and freshmen and sophomores rarely made varsity unless they were exceptional talents. He said I was good, but not exceptional, and that was okay, because most people weren't. He put his arm around my shoulders and said, real friends told each other hard truths, and the hard truth was that I wasn't ready for varsity yet. I should wait another year, develop my skills on JV, and then try out when I had a real shot. When I hesitated, he doubled down and said if I tried out and failed, people would remember me as the guy who couldn't make varsity. But if I focused on JV and dominated there, I'd build a reputation as someone working his way up strategically. I almost believed him, almost let his logic convince me that skipping varsity tryouts was the smart move. But something felt wrong about the whole conversation, something I couldn't articulate at the time. The way he kept emphasizing my limitations while making his own success seem inevitable. The way he framed my potential embarrassment as something that would hurt him. The way he needed me to agree not to try out, like my decision somehow affected his chances. I told him I appreciated his concern, but I was going to try out anyway because I'd been preparing for this since freshman year and needed to know where I stood. His expression changed for just a second, something cold and calculating, before he recovered and said he understood and hoped I'd prove him wrong. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. Tryouts started on Monday, September 8th at 3:30 in the afternoon. The gym was packed with hopeful players, probably 40 guys competing for maybe 12 spots. Coach Reeves stood at center court with his clipboard and whistle, flanked by his 2 assistant coaches. Coach Reeves had been at Northridge for 15 years and had a reputation for being brilliant but merciless. He cut players without explanation and expected perfection from everyone who made his team. He was probably 50 years old with gray hair and the kind of intense stare that made you want to prove yourself worthy of his attention. He blew his whistle and explained the tryout format. 3 days of drills, scrimmages, and fitness tests. He'd evaluate ball handling, shooting accuracy, defensive capabilities, basketball IQ, and physical conditioning. At the end of day 3, he'd post the roster. No appeals, no second chances. I noticed Liam positioning himself near the front of the group where Coach Reeves could see him clearly. He was wearing the expensive basketball shoes his dad had bought him specifically for tryouts, and had clearly prepared to make an impression. During the first drill, which tested defensive footwork and lateral movement, Liam performed well but not exceptionally. He was quick but occasionally overcommitted to fake moves. When it was my turn, something clicked. My footwork felt smooth and controlled. I anticipated the offensive player's movements and stayed in front of him consistently. Coach Reeves watched me carefully and made a note on his clipboard. I caught Liam staring at me with an unreadable expression. The shooting drills revealed something unexpected. For years, Liam had been the better shooter during our practice sessions, but under the pressure of tryouts, his accuracy dropped significantly. He made maybe 60% of his three-pointers, while I made close to 85%. My form was consistent, and my release was quick. Coach Reeves called me over after the drill and asked where I'd learned to shoot like that. I told him I'd been practicing every afternoon for the last year, working on my form until it became automatic. He nodded and told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing. When I walked back to the water fountain, Liam intercepted me and said, Coach was probably just being nice because he felt bad knowing I wouldn't make the team. He said shooting drills were only a small part of the evaluation, and real game performance mattered more. Day 2 focused on scrimmages where Coach Reeves divided us into teams and let us play full-court games while he evaluated our decision-making and teamwork. I got placed on a team with 3 seniors who'd played JV last year and were desperate to make varsity. Liam ended up on the opposing team with some talented juniors. During the first scrimmage, something extraordinary happened. I found my rhythm completely. I was making passes that created open shots for teammates, grabbing rebounds, and playing aggressive defense that forced turnovers. My team won by 18 points, and I'd contributed 12 points, 7 assists, and 9 rebounds. Coach Reeves stopped the scrimmage halfway through and switched some players around, putting me against stronger competition to see if I could maintain my performance. I did. My second scrimmage ended with me scoring 15 points and completely shutting down the opposing team's best scorer. Liam's performance during scrimmages was solid but unremarkable. He scored decently but made several bad passes that resulted in turnovers. His defensive effort seemed inconsistent, sometimes intense, and other times lazy. After the second day of tryouts, we walked to the parking lot together like we always did. Liam was quieter than usual and kept glancing at me sideways. Finally, he said he needed to tell me something important. He said he'd overheard Coach Reeves talking to the assistant coaches about me, and it wasn't good. He claimed Coach had said I was trying too hard to impress and coming across as desperate, that my performance was unsustainable and probably fueled by tryout adrenaline rather than real skill. Liam said Coach was planning to cut me after day 3 because he didn't trust players who peaked during tryouts and couldn't maintain that level during the season. The information felt specific enough to be believable, but vague enough that I couldn't verify it. I asked Liam how he'd overheard this conversation, and he said he'd been in the equipment room putting away balls when the coaches walked past talking. He insisted he was telling me this as a friend, so I wouldn't be blindsided by the cut. He suggested maybe I should withdraw from tryouts before the final day to save face, tell people I'd decided to focus on academics instead. That way, I wouldn't have to experience the public humiliation of getting cut. The way he presented this felt genuinely concerned on the surface, but something about his eagerness for me to quit felt wrong. I told him I was seeing tryouts through to the end, regardless of what Coach supposedly said. Liam's jaw tightened, and he said I was being stubborn and stupid, throwing away my dignity for nothing. Day 3 arrived, and the tension in the gym was palpable. Everyone knew this was the final evaluation before roster decisions. Coach Reeves announced we'd be doing one more round of full-court scrimmages, followed by individual skills assessments. During the scrimmage, I played the best basketball of my life. Everything flowed naturally. My shots fell consistently. My passes found open teammates. My defensive positioning disrupted the opposing team's offense. I finished with 19 points, 6 assists, and 8 rebounds. When the scrimmage ended, several players came up to congratulate me on my performance. Liam stood near the bleachers watching with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The individual skills assessment tested everything: dribbling through cones, free throw shooting under pressure, defensive slides, and a conditioning sprint. I performed well on everything except the conditioning sprint where I finished middle of the pack. Liam excelled at the sprint, but struggled with the dribbling drill, losing control of the ball twice. When tryouts officially ended at 6:15 that evening, Coach Reeves told everyone to go home and check the school website at 8 o'clock the next morning for the roster announcement. He said congratulations to those who made it and encouraged everyone else to try again next year or consider JV. The gym cleared out slowly with players discussing their performances and predicting who'd make the team. That night, Liam texted me at 9:30 asking if I was nervous about tomorrow's announcement. I said yes and admitted I thought I'd performed well enough to make the team. He responded immediately saying I shouldn't get my hopes up because tryout performance didn't always translate to roster decisions. He said Coach Reeves valued specific qualities that weren't always obvious during tryouts, things like leadership potential and team chemistry and family legacy. He reminded me that his dad had been team captain, and that kind of connection mattered to coaches even if they didn't admit it publicly. He said he wasn't trying to be negative but wanted me to be realistic so I wouldn't be devastated tomorrow. I told him I appreciated his concern but was confident in my performance. He sent back a single word. Okay. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying every moment of tryouts in my head, analyzing my performance, wondering if I'd done enough. At 7:45 the next morning, I was already at my computer refreshing the school website waiting for the roster to post. At exactly 8 o'clock, the athletics page updated with a PDF titled Varsity Basketball Roster 2024 to 2025. My hands shook as I clicked it open. The roster listed 12 names in alphabetical order. I scanned through them once quickly, then again slowly to make sure I wasn't missing anything. My name was there, listed 7th. Nathan Pierce, senior, guard/forward. I'd made varsity. Relief and exhilaration flooded through me simultaneously. I'd actually done it. I scrolled through the rest of the roster to see who else made it. Liam's name wasn't there. He'd been cut. A complicated mix of emotions hit me because while I was thrilled about making the team, I felt guilty that my best friend hadn't. I texted him immediately. I made varsity. I'm so sorry you didn't. Are you okay? He didn't respond. I waited 20 minutes and sent another text asking if we could talk. Still nothing. At 10:30 that morning, my phone finally buzzed with a message from Liam. Congrats. We need to talk in person. Meet me at the coffee shop on Maple Street at noon. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and ordered while I waited. Liam showed up exactly at noon looking exhausted and angry. He sat down across from me without ordering anything and said we needed to talk about what happened. I started to tell him I was sorry he didn't make the team, but he cut me off and said that wasn't what this was about. He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between him and someone named Coach. The messages appeared to be from Coach Reeves's personal number and discussed roster decisions. In the messages, Coach told Liam he was definitely making varsity and that Nathan Pierce was a backup consideration who probably wouldn't make the final cut. The timestamps showed these messages were sent during the tryout period. I was confused about why Liam was showing me this. He said he wanted me to understand that Coach Reeves had lied to him, had promised him a spot, and then given it to me instead. He said this wasn't fair because he'd been preparing for varsity his entire high school career while I'd barely taken basketball seriously until this year. He claimed Coach must have made a mistake or been pressured by someone to put me on the roster instead of him. He wanted us to go together to Coach Reeves and explain that there'd been an error, that Liam should be on the team instead of me. The request was so absurd I almost laughed. I told him that wasn't how roster decisions worked, and that clearly I'd performed better during tryouts. His expression hardened, and he said I was being selfish and a terrible friend. He said if our friendship meant anything, I'd do the right thing and step aside. When I refused, Liam stood up and said I'd regret this decision. He said people would find out the truth about how I'd manipulated my way onto the team, and my reputation would be destroyed. I asked what he meant by that, and he smiled coldly and said, I'd see soon enough. He left the coffee shop without another word. I sat there feeling sick and confused about what had just happened. The friend I'd known for 4 years had just threatened me over a basketball roster. That afternoon, I got a text from Alexis Chen, a girl from my physics class, asking if the rumors about me were true. I had no idea what rumors she was talking about. She sent me a screenshot of an Instagram post from an anonymous account called Northridge_Truth that claimed I'd been caught cheating during tryouts by using performance-enhancing drugs, and that Coach Reeves was covering it up because my dad was friends with the school principal. The post had been shared 43 times and had over 200 comments. People were calling me a cheater and demanding I be removed from the varsity roster. My stomach dropped as I read through the comments because some people seemed to believe it completely, while others were asking for proof. The anonymous account had also posted a blurry photo that supposedly showed me meeting with someone in the school parking lot during tryouts, claiming this was me buying drugs from a dealer. The photo was too dark and distant to identify anyone clearly, but the caption insisted it was me. I felt panic rising because this wasn't just some minor rumor that would blow over quickly. This was a coordinated attack on my reputation with specific accusations that could have serious consequences. I called Liam immediately, but he didn't answer. I texted him asking if he knew anything about the Instagram account or the rumors. He responded an hour later saying he'd heard about it and was shocked that I'd been using performance enhancers. His message was perfectly crafted to sound concerned while also implicitly agreeing with the accusations. I realized then that he was behind the anonymous account and the rumors. He'd created this entire narrative to destroy my reputation and force me off the varsity roster. The realization made me feel physically ill because this wasn't just friend drama or competition gone wrong. This was calculated sabotage by someone who'd pretended to care about me for years. My parents found out about the rumors that evening when my mom's friend called asking if the stories about me using drugs were true. My mom was horrified and demanded to know what was happening. I explained everything: the tryouts, making varsity, Liam getting cut, his strange behavior, and now the anonymous Instagram account spreading lies about me. My dad looked furious and said we needed to address this immediately before it escalated further. He called Coach Reeves directly and explained the situation. Coach Reeves said he'd heard about the rumors and had already begun investigating their source. He told my dad that my tryout performance had been legitimate and that he had no concerns about performance-enhancing drug use, but he needed to follow proper protocol and address the accusations formally. The next morning, I was called to Principal Morrison's office during second period. My hands were shaking as I walked through the empty hallways, wondering if I was about to be suspended or expelled based on false accusations. Principal Morrison was a stern woman in her 50s who'd been at Northridge for over a decade. She sat behind her desk with Coach Reeves and another man I didn't recognize. The stranger introduced himself as Athletic Director Kenneth Barrett, who oversaw all sports programs in our district. He explained that they'd received formal complaints about my participation in varsity tryouts and needed to conduct an investigation. He asked if I'd used any performance-enhancing substances before or during tryouts. I said absolutely not, and offered to take any drug test they wanted immediately. Athletic Director Barrett nodded and said they'd scheduled a comprehensive drug screening for that afternoon at Northridge Medical Center. A nurse named Patricia Donnelly would administer the test and send results directly to the school. He explained that until the test results came back, I was temporarily suspended from all team activities. If the results were clean, I'd be reinstated immediately, and they'd address the source of the false accusations. If the results showed anything suspicious, I'd face disciplinary action, including removal from the roster and possible suspension from school. Coach Reeves looked uncomfortable during this entire conversation and told me privately that he believed I was innocent but had to follow district protocol for all drug-related accusations. I left the principal's office feeling humiliated and angry that Liam's lies had forced me into this position. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. The drug test that afternoon was thorough and invasive. Nurse Donnelly took blood samples, urine samples, and made me fill out extensive paperwork about any medications or supplements I'd taken in the last 6 months. She explained the results would take 3 to 5 business days and would screen for common performance enhancers, including steroids, stimulants, and blood doping agents. I knew I'd test clean because I'd never used anything beyond occasional ibuprofen for headaches, but the waiting period would be excruciating while rumors continued spreading. When I got home, my phone had 37 text messages from classmates asking about the situation. Some were supportive and said they didn't believe the rumors. Others seemed to enjoy the drama and asked invasive questions about my supposed drug use. Liam texted me that evening saying he'd heard about my drug test and hoped everything would be okay. His message was dripping with fake concern, and I wanted to call him out directly for creating this entire situation, but I had no proof he was behind the anonymous Instagram account. I needed evidence before making accusations. I spent that night researching how to identify anonymous social media accounts and found several articles about IP address tracking and metadata analysis. Most methods required legal subpoenas or technical expertise I didn't have. I felt helpless watching my reputation get destroyed while the person responsible hid behind anonymity. The next 3 days were torture. The rumors spread beyond Instagram to Twitter and TikTok. Someone created a meme using my school photo with captions about cheating athletes. Teachers looked at me with suspicion. Students whispered when I walked past. The varsity basketball team group chat that I'd been added to after making the roster went silent whenever I posted anything. I felt completely isolated and began questioning whether making varsity was worth this nightmare. My mom suggested we hire a lawyer to address the defamation, but I didn't want to escalate things legally unless absolutely necessary. I just wanted the truth to come out and for Liam to face consequences for what he'd done. On the 4th day after my drug test, Athletic Director Barrett called me back to his office. My stomach was in knots as I walked there during lunch period. He sat behind his desk with a folder containing what I assumed were my test results. He opened the folder and told me the results had come back completely clean. No performance enhancers, no prohibited substances, nothing suspicious whatsoever. I felt overwhelming relief wash over me. He said I was immediately reinstated to the varsity roster and all restrictions on team activities were lifted. Then he said something that changed everything. He told me the school had also been investigating the source of the accusations and had identified the person behind the anonymous Instagram account. Athletic Director Barrett turned his computer monitor around to show me. He'd been working with the school's IT coordinator and had traced the Instagram account creation to a specific IP address registered to a student at Northridge High. The account, Northridge_Truth, had been created from Liam Fitzgerald's home internet connection on the same day I'd made the varsity roster. Every post accusing me of drug use had been made from Liam's phone. The IT coordinator had also recovered deleted drafts from the account that showed Liam had written multiple versions of the accusations, carefully crafting the wording to sound believable while avoiding anything that could be immediately disproven. Barrett explained that creating false accusations of drug use was a serious violation of school policy and potentially illegal defamation. I sat there processing this information and feeling validation mixed with devastation. My best friend of 4 years had systematically tried to destroy my reputation because I'd made a basketball team and he hadn't. Barrett asked if I wanted to press charges for defamation or harassment. I said I needed time to think about it. He told me the school would be taking disciplinary action against Liam, regardless of whether I pursued legal action. He'd be suspended for 2 weeks and required to publicly retract his accusations. If he refused, he'd face expulsion. Barrett also said he'd be coordinating with Instagram to have the anonymous account permanently removed and would be sending emails to all parents explaining the situation and clarifying that the accusations against me were completely false. That afternoon, Coach Reeves called a mandatory team meeting for all varsity players. We gathered in the gym, and he addressed what had happened. He explained that false accusations had been made against me, that I'd been cleared completely, and that the person responsible was being disciplined. He said this team was built on trust and integrity, and anyone who spread rumors or participated in sabotaging teammates would be removed immediately. Then he looked directly at me and apologized for the hell I'd been put through over the last week. He said my performance during tryouts had been exceptional, and I'd earned my roster spot through skill and hard work. The other players nodded in agreement, and several came up afterward to welcome me properly to the team. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe things would be okay. The school sent out an official email to all parents and students the next morning, explaining that false accusations had been made against a student-athlete, that the accusations had been thoroughly investigated and proven completely false, and that the person responsible had been identified and disciplined. The email didn't name me or Liam specifically, but everyone knew who it was about. My phone exploded with apologetic messages from classmates who'd believed the rumors. Some apologized sincerely, while others made excuses about how convincing the false story had been. The anonymous Instagram account was deleted by that afternoon, though screenshots of the posts continued circulating for several more days. Liam was suspended from school starting that Monday. I didn't see him for 2 weeks, though I heard through mutual friends that he was furious about the consequences and blamed me for ruining his life. He apparently told people I'd manipulated the school administration and lied about him being behind the Instagram account. A few people believed him, but most recognized his suspension as confirmation of his guilt. When he returned to school after his suspension, he looked different. The confident, charismatic person I'd known was replaced by someone who couldn't make eye contact and walked through hallways with his head down. The few times we passed each other, he wouldn't acknowledge me at all. The varsity basketball season started in November, and I threw myself completely into training. Practice consumed my afternoons and gave me purpose beyond the drama with Liam. Coach Reeves pushed us relentlessly, running complex plays and conditioning drills that left us exhausted. I started most games as a guard and averaged 12 points per game through the first month of the season. My teammates became genuine friends who supported me both on and off the court. Being part of something positive helped me process everything that had happened with Liam and begin moving forward. 3 weeks into the season, we had a home game against Riverside High, one of our biggest rivals. The gym was packed with students, parents, and several college scouts who came specifically to watch our team. I was nervous about performing well with scouts present and could feel the pressure building as warm-up ended and the game started. Riverside came out aggressive and physical, clearly planning to intimidate us with rough defense. The first quarter was intense with both teams trading baskets and neither establishing a clear advantage. I scored 6 points in the first quarter and grabbed 3 rebounds, but felt like I could be playing better. During the second quarter, something clicked for me exactly like it had during tryouts. I found my rhythm completely and everything flowed naturally. I hit 3 consecutive three-pointers, assisted on 2 fast-break layups, and played suffocating defense that forced multiple turnovers. The crowd went wild as we pulled ahead by 15 points. Coach Reeves called timeout and told me to keep doing exactly what I was doing. When we went back out, I continued dominating. By halftime, I had 21 points, and we were ahead by 18. In the locker room, my teammates were pumped, and Coach Reeves looked genuinely impressed. He pulled me aside and said college scouts had been asking about me during the first half. That information made my hands shake with nervous energy, but also motivated me to maintain my performance. The second half was more controlled as Riverside adjusted their defense to focus on stopping me specifically. Coach Reeves ran plays designed to free me up for open shots, and I delivered consistently. My final stat line for the game was 34 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. We won by 23 points, and the crowd gave me a standing ovation as I walked off the court. After the game, Coach Reeves introduced me to 3 college scouts who wanted to discuss my recruitment potential. They represented mid-level Division I programs and were impressed by my shooting accuracy and basketball IQ. They left me their contact information and said they'd be watching my development throughout the season. That night felt surreal as I processed everything that had happened in the last 3 months. I'd gone from almost skipping tryouts based on my best friend's manipulation to being recruited by Division I programs. The entire trajectory of my life had changed because I'd trusted my own abilities instead of letting someone else define my limitations. I thought about Liam and wondered if he was following the team's success or deliberately ignoring it. Part of me wanted him to see what I'd accomplished, to understand that his attempts to sabotage me had failed completely. Another part of me just felt sad about losing a friendship that I'd valued deeply, even if it had been built on his need to feel superior. The basketball season continued with our team winning consistently and building toward playoffs. I averaged 15 points per game and became known for clutch shooting in pressure situations. College scouts came to multiple games and Coach Reeves told me I had legitimate scholarship potential if I maintained my performance. My parents attended every home game and were proud beyond words about what I'd achieved. My dad told me one night after a game that watching me succeed, despite Liam's sabotage, had taught him something about resilience and character. He said most people would have quit when facing false accusations and public humiliation, but I'd fought through it and let my performance speak for itself. In January, our team made playoffs and won our first 2 games convincingly. The championship game was scheduled for early February against St. Augustine Prep, the top-ranked team in our division. They had a star player named Jordan Wells, who was already committed to a major Division I program and was considered one of the best high school players in the state. The media coverage leading up to the game was intense, with local sports reporters calling it the game of the year. Coach Reeves told us to ignore the hype and focus on executing our game plan. The championship game started terribly for us. St. Augustine came out executing perfectly, and we looked nervous and sloppy by comparison. They jumped ahead by 12 points in the first quarter and maintained that lead through most of the second quarter. I was struggling to find my rhythm, missing shots I normally made and getting frustrated with myself. At halftime, we were down by 14 points, and the mood in the locker room was tense. Coach Reeves didn't yell or panic. He calmly adjusted our defensive scheme and told me specifically to stop overthinking and just play basketball like I knew how to. His confidence in me helped settle my nerves. The third quarter was when everything changed. I hit 2 quick 3-pointers that brought us within 8 points. Then our defense started forcing turnovers that led to fast break points. By the end of the third quarter, we'd cut their lead to 3 points and had momentum completely on our side. The fourth quarter became a battle with both teams trading baskets and neither able to pull away. With 2 minutes left, we were tied at 68. Jordan Wells hit a difficult fadeaway jumper to put St. Augustine ahead by 2. Coach Reeves called timeout and drew up a play designed to get me an open 3-pointer. When we came back onto the court, I could feel the weight of the moment. Championship game, 2 minutes left, down by 2 points, entire season on the line. My teammate set a perfect screen that freed me up just beyond the 3-point line. The pass came to me, and I caught it cleanly. For a split second, I thought about Liam telling me I wasn't good enough for varsity, that I should quit before embarrassing myself. Then I released the shot with perfect form. The ball arced through the air and dropped through the net without touching the rim. We were ahead by 1 point with 90 seconds left. St. Augustine called timeout and designed their own play for Jordan Wells. He drove to the basket and scored through heavy contact to put them back ahead by 1. 40 seconds left. Coach Reeves signaled for us to push the ball quickly without calling timeout. I brought the ball up court and saw my teammate cutting to the basket. I made a bounce pass that split 2 defenders perfectly. He caught it and scored an easy layup. We were ahead by 1 again with 23 seconds left. St. Augustine had one final possession to win the championship. Jordan Wells brought the ball up court slowly, draining time off the clock. With 8 seconds left, he made his move, driving hard toward the basket. I slid over to help defend, and he tried to pass to his teammate in the corner. I read the pass perfectly, jumped the passing lane, and intercepted the ball. I had possession with 4 seconds left, and St. Augustine players chasing me. Instead of dribbling out the clock, I saw an open teammate and made one final pass. He caught it as time expired, and we'd won the championship game by 1 point. The gym exploded with celebration. My teammates mobbed me at center court. Parents rushed onto the floor. Coach Reeves grabbed me and said that defensive play in the final seconds was the smartest basketball decision he'd seen all season. We were presented with the championship trophy and individual medals. I scored 26 points in the championship game and was named tournament MVP. College scouts surrounded me afterward, wanting to discuss recruitment more seriously. The entire night felt like a dream that I didn't want to end. In the parking lot after the game, I saw Liam standing by himself near the entrance. He'd apparently attended the championship game and watched everything. We made eye contact for the first time in months. He looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I walked over to him, and for a moment we just stood there in silence. Finally, I said I was sorry things had ended the way they did between us. He nodded slightly and said congratulations on the championship. Then he walked away without another word. I watched him go and felt closure settling over me. That friendship was over, and I'd accepted it. The scholarship offers started coming in March. 3 Division I programs offered me full rides to play basketball and study at their universities. My parents cried when I told them because they'd been worried about paying for college, and now that burden was eliminated. I signed with a respected program that had strong academics and a basketball tradition I could be proud of. Coach Reeves told me I'd exceeded every expectation he'd had, and that watching my development had been one of the highlights of his coaching career. On the last day of school, I cleaned out my locker and reflected on everything that had happened since those September tryouts. I'd almost let Liam's manipulation convince me not to try out at all. I'd almost accepted his definition of my limitations and settled for junior varsity or nothing. Instead, I'd trusted myself, faced false accusations and public humiliation, and fought through it all to achieve something incredible. The version of me from September wouldn't have believed what I'd accomplished by June. I ran into Liam one final time in the hallway on that last day. He was headed to his own locker carrying a box of belongings. We stopped and looked at each other. This time, he spoke first. He said he wanted to apologize for everything he'd done, for the Instagram account, and the false accusations, and years of subtle manipulation designed to keep me beneath him. He said he'd been so scared of me succeeding because it would mean he wasn't special anymore, wasn't destined for greatness like his dad. He said watching me win the championship had forced him to realize he'd destroyed our friendship over his own insecurity and that he'd regret it forever. I told him I appreciated the apology, but that some damage couldn't be repaired with words. What he'd done had been calculated and cruel, designed to destroy my reputation and future. The fact that it hadn't worked didn't make the attempt less devastating. I said I hoped he'd learn from this and treat people better in the future, but our friendship was over permanently. He nodded and said he understood. We shook hands one final time and walked in opposite directions down the hallway. That summer, I worked on my game constantly, preparing for college basketball. I thought occasionally about Liam and the friendship we'd had, recognizing now all the ways he'd undermined my confidence while pretending to be supportive. Real friends build you up and celebrate your success. They don't need you to stay small so they can feel big. The people who'd supported me during the nightmare of false accusations and public scrutiny had shown me what genuine friendship looked like. My teammates, my parents, Coach Reeves, and Athletic Director Barrett had all believed in me when it would have been easier to assume the worst. I left for college in August with a full scholarship and a clear understanding of my own worth. The kid who'd almost skipped varsity tryouts because his best friend said he wasn't good enough had become someone who'd won a state championship and earned Division I recruitment. Sometimes I still think about that September conversation in Liam's basement when he tried so hard to convince me not to try out. If I'd listened to him, none of the good things that followed would have happened. I would have spent senior year on junior varsity or quit basketball entirely, never knowing what I was capable of achieving. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.